So I call this the tension between religious convictions and political choices in our Black community. And it's based off of article or event that took place with Black pastors in the city of Detroit or Southeast Michigan, I should say, supporting a political candidate. And I feel like they was disingenuous in some of the things they talked about. As a member of this community, but as someone who's deeply invested in the future of our people, our city, and our shared journey toward justice and equity, there's a conversation happening within the Black community that reflects both our internal diversity and the tensions that arise when faith intersects with politics. This conversation was exemplified by the likes of Apostle Ellis and Pastor Lorenzo Sewell. They both demonstrate the profound ways in which our spiritual beliefs influence our political decisions. Apostle Smith and Pastor Sewell represent a growing number of Black pastors who proclaim that their political decisions are rooted not in their identity as Black Americans, but in their identity as kingdom citizens. They emphasize that their political framework is guided by biblical principles, not the struggles of race. In many ways, this perspective speaks to a broader tension within the Black community, the struggle to reconcile deeply held religious convictions with the political realities, historical experiences of being Black in America. These pastors have chosen to focus on issues they believe are at the heart of biblical values, opposing abortion, same-sex marriage, same-sex relationships, and transgender inclusion. They frame these concerns as paramount, and in doing so, they downplay the pressing issues of systematic racism, economic inequality, and the historical injustices that continue to disproportionately affect Black communities. This perspective, while rooted in faith, leaves many within our community feeling alienated and unheard. The historical role of the Black church. Let us not forget that the historical role the Black church has played in the fight for civil rights, equality, and justice. The Black church has always been the heartbeat of our struggle, the place where we organized, resisted, and found hope. It is the church that led the charge for voting rights, for desegregation, and for an end to racial violence. Leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and countless others drew upon their faith. Yes, but their faith was never disconnected from the lived reality of what it means to be Black in America. So when some of our spiritual leaders today proclaim that their political decisions are guided solely by their identity as kingdom citizens, it raises a question. Have we forgotten the fullness of our calling? Is it possible to disconnect faith from race when the very scriptures call us to seek justice, defend the oppressed, and stand up for the marginalized? Now, focusing on biblical issues alone neglects the reality of our struggle. Make no mistake, our faith is vital. It is the foundation upon which many of us build our lives. But focusing solely on issues like abortion, same-sex relationships, and transgender inclusion as the primary markers of biblical faithfulness neglects the reality of our struggle as Black people in this country. The Bible speaks clearly about justice, mercy, and love for the downtrodden. In Proverbs 31, verses 8 through 9, it says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are distant. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy." The cries of Black Detroiters who face systematic racism, economic disinvestment, police violence, and cries that must be heard by those who claim to represent the kingdom of God. Understanding Detroit's political decline is more than a partisan issue. Pastor Sewell had pointed to the longstanding control of Detroit by the Democratic Party as evidence of the city's decline. And yes, Detroit has faced significant challenges that cannot be ignored. However, placing the blame solely at the feet of a political party ignores the deep-rooted systematic issues that have plagued this city for decades. This housing discrimination, underfunded public services. These are simple problems problems created by a single political ideology, but by decades of systematic neglect, racism, and economic policies that transcend party lines. The hardships of Detroiters face are the result of broader forces, including white flight, discriminatory lending practices, and a lack of investment in Black communities. To reduce Detroit's struggles to a partisan blame game is to ignore the very real structural forces that have shaped this city's landscape. Change is indeed needed, but it must be change that addresses the root causes of poverty, unemployment, and lack of opportunity in our communities. It must be the change that brings about equity, justice, and investment in the people of Detroit, not just in political rhetoric. Embracing the country's narrative, the oversight of Black history, Sewell's belief that Black people should embrace the country's narrative, and in doing so, we should go toward conservatism, reflects a deeply held belief in self-reliance and patriotism. There is value in self-reliance. There is value in pride in our contributions to this nation. But we cannot ignore that the Black experience in this country includes centuries of enslavement, segregation, and ongoing disenfranchisement. The narrative of this country is not one of pure opportunity and freedom for Black people. It is a narrative of struggle, resistance, and survival. The narrative includes being systematically denied access to wealth, education, and political power. It includes policies like Jim Crow, redlining, mass incarceration, and voter suppression. These are not issues that can be solved by embracing the status quo. They are issues that demand bold, transformative policies aimed at equity, justice, and repair. For Black people to truly thrive in this country, we must address the injustices that continue to shape our lives. We cannot simply embrace a narrative of individuals and patriotism without acknowledging the collective pain, trauma, and history that have defined our existence in America. Balancing spiritual convictions with the fight for justice. While we absolutely must reflect in the diversity of political thought within our community, we must also recognize the dangers of prioritizing a narrow set of spiritual values over the broader concerns of justice and equality. The struggles we face as Black people in America are not separate from our faith. They are intimately tied to it. Jesus himself spoke of caring for the least of these. He condemned the Pharisees for their legalism and failure to show mercy. In some way, we must not allow our political decisions to be based solely on a limited interpretation of biblical values while ignoring the broader calling to seek justice for the oppressed. Yes, we can hold fast to our spiritual convictions, but those convictions must also lead us to stand up for policies that address economic inequality, systematic racism, and the historical injustice that continue to impact Black communities. It is possible to be guided by faith while also advocating for the policies that will uplift and empower our people. The divide between spiritual values and race-based issues, thus the divide between spiritual values and race-based issues reflects a broader debate about Black people in America, about how Black people in America should leverage their collective political power. But let me be clear, we do not have to choose between our faith and our commitment to racial justice. We can and must do both. We can hold our spiritual convictions while also recognizing the need for policies that address the real lived experiences of Black Americans. In conclusion, my brothers and sisters, this is not about abandoning our faith and turning away from God. It is about broadening our understanding of what it means to live out that faith in a way that truly serves our people. It is about holding our leaders accountable, demanding more than lip service to a few select issues, and standing up for justice in every area of our lives. Let's not forget the words of Amos 5:24, but let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Our faith calls us to more justice, more equity, and more love to our fellow man. Let us rise to that call for the sake of our community, our city, and our future. Thank you.